Jesus. The disrespect. Test. Test. Shake the camera. Alright, there we go. Get all that Gucci shit nice and quiet. Alright. Alright, so hello to those of you who will be watching this as a VOD. Alright, so we are looking at Hetro Nix. I guess that's how you're going to wind up. Oh, I missed. Can I not get over there now? Great. Alright, so
come on, let's bring it together.
Yeah, so basically we're going to be looking at Hetro and kind of seeing what his playstyle is and kind of like things to look at as he gets back into the game and such. So some errors that are going to be made I'm going to maybe pass on because they very much could be things that are normally done but not being done because of kind of like rust and shaking off the rust and such. But I'll try to kind of identify the larger things that really need to be picked up on to talk about and go over. I'm not expecting everybody to watch this video, so I'm not going to go over any pathing or anything like that. I'm really just going to be looking at Hetro, and since I see Boopery and Brunick, oh no, Brunick's on DPS, so maybe I'll be more. Maybe I won't bully him this time.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Attackers incoming. Defend objective A.
Actually, it's from his POV for right now. More over it. There we go. So something that I would suggest as Reinhardt is that you get used to using the shield to kind of look over your own shoulder at times. So Reinhardt has a function when you hold both the triggers, you can free cam while holding your shield in kind of like a default direction. And you want to be able to kind of use this to flick behind you and see who you're actually shielding and whether or not your shield is actually needed in the moment. It's kind of a small thing. But it winds up adding up as time goes on, because when you're shielding people who don't need shielding, or when you're shielding absolutely nothing, you wind up just kind of wasting resources and not really doing what you need to be doing at certain times, because you could be like taking space or saving energy, but it looks like there's people behind you right now, but you're definitely not checking. You're mostly just guessing. And this is kind of the resources are getting drained down. That's just unfortunate. Not a bad shadow, worthy solo shadow. It was a solo shadow, but I think he wanted to get me on it. I'm not sure.
Mercy on call. At your service.
So again, I'm not really saying much right now because this is kind of like shaking off the rough period. There's a bunch of small things that I think you're kind of just getting back into. I think your awareness is a little bit off right now in terms of like who's getting behind you, who's on what flanks, where are certain characters that you should be keeping track of, like Hog and Ball. But again, that can be just a factor of you getting back into the game and getting back into the pace of things. Things might be going a little bit faster than you're used to because you stepped away now for some time. You seem to still be able to kind of like get your shatter up, and your normal technique for the most part seems okay. So you hit your fire strikes quite normally. You could have shielded that. Hit your fire strikes fairly consistently, at least on one target at a time. Your shatter isn't coming in too delayed. I think your Zarya is an your off tank is a random. I can't confirm that, but based on from how during the push you didn't get any bubbles or any direct support, I can either assume that the Zarya is not in comms with you or pocketing and helping someone else. Interesting decision. So I'm not sure if that's really a Rust thing necessarily, because I feel like that's a decision-making type thing. So what it seems to me is that you don't have, I don't want to say it's sensitivity, but maybe you don't know how to rotate your shield quickly on console. So generally what you want to be doing in situations like that where you don't have Fire Strike is you want to try to finesse the enemy Junkrat into using the Riptire basically on your shield. And there's a few ways to kind of do it properly, but the basic concept is that you want to do a quick rotation and flicker your shield so that you make the Junkrat think that your shield is going to be down when you're just putting it right back up, and it's just going to detonate right into your shield, right? So this has happened a few times where there's been a Hog on your flank or a Ball coming from somewhere, and you just don't rotate your shields very quickly. So you want to get a little bit more used to flickering your shield and maybe using some shield hopping in order to aid your kind of maneuverability and rotation speed in terms of just like you pivoting your character around. This is going to help mainly with dealing with kind of like flanking characters and people who are facing you from multiple angles. If there are two people coming at you from different sides, this can kind of help in like staving them off for a little bit, even if it can't completely stop them. So while it seems like your awareness is kind of down because you haven't been back for a while, there's definitely a little bit of a slowness to some of your movements in terms of actually reacting to some things. And I think there we see that it's not just your reaction speed that might be actually slow, but your decision making is kind of being affected by your inability to react and shield in the correct places. So I can show you in an actual like custom game if you need to see like what the flickering looks like and stuff like that, and how you could pull it off. We could practice it in customs on Wednesday, but there is definitely a need for it just in general. Hopefully kind of you can grasp it as you play and such. Here I would just take the free space they're giving you, right? Because there's no tank on cart, and this tends to become an issue of the squishy people don't really want to be always contesting cart. So there's no reason to be hiding behind the pillar when you could be hiding behind the cart and you would be blocked by the same kind of like line of sight type idea. You wouldn't be maybe as protected. Your shoulders sure would poke out and they'd be able to see that you're there, but they know you're here and they could just very well turn the corner and assault you, and there's no reason that you shouldn't be putting pressure on the cart in this situation. I'm sorry that I'm not going directly back to you. My left is broken right now. I did something with my binding set, messed it up. Another small issue here is you keep pushing this small choke right here in with this Junkrat who's already been protecting it pretty well. So while you may be thinking that these are all chokes you have to push through, this one is particularly small and you've already tried to push through it I think 2 times now, with the Junkrat kind of pre-spamming it and already having traps laid in there. So it's a little bit questionable to keep going back there. It'll be interesting to see how much you calm in scrims, because what it looked like to me there was that you wanted to go for a flank shatter, and while you did have a type of flank shatter along the way, you wanted to go for a bigger shatter by getting a wider rotation, which required you to have more time, right? And the enemies eventually saw you and just backed you into your corner. And in a team, this could be negated by kind of like calming. And again, another situation where you could just put up your shields, maybe a little bit of a slow reaction time. But we'll see as you kind of get more comfortable with the game. I'll be able to tell more and kind of maybe talk you through what you need to be talked through. But yeah, you seem to be going for the flank shot, and that kind of like enemy awareness can be negated by your own team's aggression or push timing or whatever. So it'll be interesting to see how much you kind of can calm in those situations and how you communicate what you want to do to your team.
Again. I'll feel that in the morning.
I've sighted the enemy.
Get behind me.
Interesting. So I'm going to start off by saying don't do that. And what I mean by don't do that is don't put your controller down. Because the Mercy resed you and then you just were AFK for a little bit. But of course I can't know if there was something going on in the background, if you were called for something or anything like that. But I'm just going to go based off the assumption that maybe you put your controller down and just like try to take a breather. Especially when you have a Mercy, you definitely don't want to be doing that. But we could talk about your positioning here a little bit, because it's a little bit haphazard and a little bit unnecessary, right? So Hog was behind, and I think if you had been listening closely enough, you would have been able to hear him actually jump from this balcony area here onto the landing below. So let's rewind real quick and let's actually go back to your perspective and make sure we can actually hear these things that I'm saying we should be able to hear. Charge in. Okay.
I'll feel that in the morning.
That right there. We hear Hog come out and we hear him go, ooh. And it's a really awkward, weird sound that's muddled in the background of Junkrat chaos and nonsense, but it's there. And then you don't hear him again. Very slight sounds, but sounds that would save the team fight sometimes. And your Zarya has to react here with 2 bubbles because she panics and turns around and sees the Hog. And now you're left without any support from your off tank because you didn't hear the Hog behind. A minuscule thing that you can't necessarily blame on yourself, because you know, in a team situation you're going to have somebody who's looking out for flankers, but these are the type of the things that can take you to that next level, right? If you want to get into Diamond, or maybe if you're trying to get into Masters. I don't know exactly where your SR is right now, but those are the things that will make or break certain fights, right? That reactive hearing, that ability to have the presence of mind to know what's going on based off of audio alone. But let's get back into the positioning here that you wind up taking. So you take this odd rotation around the side of the cart, around to the front, and then you seem to be backing up right now. So you're going to get a little bit pincered and bullied because it looks like... No, this Torb is coming back. Let's see where this Torb goes really quick. Okay, he's going down main. So it does look like there's a Junkrat up top. Yes, that's indeed what Junkrat is. Roadhog behind, and a Rein Ana pushing into you with majority of your team facing backwards, right? So what's precarious about this situation is that you have not cleared bridge, you have not had anybody checking your flanks for majority of the time, and you're still not behind the cart. So this can be a small thing almost, right? But at some point throughout the duration of this, you have to be aware that your team has been pooling resources elsewhere, that they haven't been going through you. You haven't been getting all of the healing or the pocketing, right? You haven't been getting all of the bubbles. And we know this because there's been several fights where you've been blown up first, right? There's been fights that you've won, fights that you've lost, but almost always consistently is that you're dead very early into the fight. You haven't been alive through a duration of them, except when you hit the solo shatter on the Mei, maybe one other time that I can think of. But Even in capturing first point, you showed up towards the end of the capture, and winning the fight to take control of the cart, you ended up with you ended up coming up late while everybody else had controlled the cart, and then you had died first in the last fight prior to that, or something like that, or early into the fight, So now you put yourself in a position where you have to actually confront the enemies, right? Because as you make this rotation around, and even as you back up now, notice that you have to back up because there's nothing to protect you. And as you make this rotation backwards, you still have nowhere to quickly retreat to because you're backing up. And backing up is inherently more difficult than walking forward. Why? Because you don't have eyes in the back of your head. Crazy thought, I know. Revolutionary, I'm sure. But by doing this small rotation, you've kind of put yourself just in an odd, precarious situation where you haven't cleared any of the flank angles or checked for anything. You know resources aren't pulling through you, but you're still putting yourself in an aggressive position almost where you're in front of the cart saying, I want to move forward, right? Instead of you could be behind the cart saying, I'm just going to chill and wait for my team to do stuff or wait for my team to give me a sign that they're ready, right? You're definitely in comms with Boop or Brunick. I know that because I know that you three are on the team. So the three of you should be communicating in some way to make sure that all of you understand when the team is ready to engage. I'm sure you started backing up maybe because Boop said that the Roadhog is behind, but you were already in front of the cart by the time he said that. And these are the small things, again, that I'm talking about, right? Nobody cleared bridge. You didn't hear the Roadhog audio behind. Nobody is watching flank. And when I'm reviewing one person, it can seem harsh, but if you want to win, then you have to be the reason that you win. You cannot depend on your teammates to do other things for you, right? You have to trust them to do their jobs, right? You can't heal as a tank. You have to let your healers heal, but you also have to be able to mitigate the amount of damage you take so that your healers can heal you up or have enough time to support the whole team. There is a give and take to the trust and responsibility that you have with randoms and even with teammates that you play in scrims with. There's a balance to all of it. And this is a situation where you play slightly too aggressive and the enemy is largely able to punish you because you're just kind of pincered. Also, getting into this corner is a big no-no because it is a corner. You get bounced off the wall here, which isn't a big thing, but if you get booped the wrong way or get kind of body blocked a certain way, it's very easy to get pincered into a corner. So you want to look out for corner situations like that where it's very easy for you to get trapped, right? If you think of this as kind of like a little cup, you put yourself in a situation where the only way out was towards the enemy. And yeah, there's an escape right here, but this is not guaranteed. This can be canceled by Lucio booping you or Rein body blocking you or, Roadhog hooking you at the right time. Like, this is a distinct space that you have to go, and it makes CC particularly easy, meaning that you can get trapped and they can punish your aggression. Slight aggression, but aggression nonetheless. Okay. Cover over something. And then you AFK and don't get any value out of the res.
Spasiba.
Let me get you patched up.
30 seconds remaining.
We're out of time.
We need to get the payload moving.
Again, it may sound like I'm nitpicking on some things. I'm just trying to get you to understand the scope of kind of like how small plays can factor into larger victories, or how smaller mistakes rather can factor into a larger loss. Also, I don't want to comment on some things that I can't tell if they're tendency or kind of just a new thing from not being back in a while. Or, there's so many variables to what you could be doing that until I see more than once, I don't necessarily want to say like, oh, you play this way and you need to make this change, right? This is the first time I'm seeing you play, so I'm just trying to explain what you could have done in these situations to improve your chances. And some concepts and theories that you can kind of fiddle with and think about in your head. Like the little cup in that situation where you might be trapping yourself. It's a big beat. Big beat by the enemies.
Score 0-1. Switching sides. Initiating match.
Now we just wait. I should fast forward, not just sit here and stare at the clouds. They're pretty clouds though, you know?
Ready for battle.
Justice will be done.
Hello. Hey.
Attackers incoming in 30 seconds.
We fought a terrible battle here.
Thank you. Going
Many
in.
crusaders lost their lives.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Attackers incoming.
Alright, give me 1 second.
Defend objective A.
Right. Okay. So let's get back into this now.
Get behind!
I do like your pin technique. It seems maybe a little bit off or shaky, but you definitely have an understanding of how pin can work to your advantage and how to not make it a big disadvantage, right? Because pin can be a huge disadvantage if you just throw yourself into the enemies, but you don't seem to cause any problems with your pinning. So, I think going forward we may want to talk about kind of min-maxing basically your shield usage and such. You seem to have a good fundamental understanding of why you want to stand in certain areas. Like I see you kind of like recharging your shield a little bit by stepping to the side and not hard shielding the whole time. But I do think that you are wasteful in some of the ways you flicker your shield. Like some of the timing is poor, and it causes you to just not, or it causes you to delay your shield recharge and not have as much shield as you potentially could. And it's not causing any issues right now. That's because they don't have a high damage composition that breaks shields or anything. I mean, they have
My ultimate is
Zen and McCree, I guess, that break shield pretty decently well. But the rest of their composition doesn't do it pretty much at all. So it doesn't really affect you too much. They have two semi-shield break characters. Alright, I'm gonna pause this. Okay, where is capture settings? Okay. It's on 2. Hello? I think I should be back, but I'm gonna wait to pop up on my screen. Okay, looks like I'm back. Yeah, sorry, I've moved over to a new console, so the audio balance on this one was a little bit different in the settings. Hopefully you can hear me better now, but if you can't, just let me know and I can rebalance it a little bit more. Okay. So yeah, we can kind of min-max your shield usage a little bit, how you flicker the shield, where you peek out, and the timings you use to kind of do that. Okay, so we're gonna go back in that fight because I feel like you just followed the enemy Reinhardt and lost track of what your team needed you for. Okay, so Ball's already harassing in the back. Reinhardt's over there. You're just gonna take this kind of awkward angle overhead perspective where we can't see everything. Alright. Okay. So the enemy kind of split pushes you, and you haven't responded yet. I think that's largely okay because you are mirroring the enemy's Reinhardt's pathing, but I don't know. Let's see where you go. Okay, McCree steps back, Zen pushes forward, and then you're pushing into the enemy Baptiste, and you don't go to confirm the kill, you kind of just lose him, I think, and then you kind of are too afraid to move forward, and Baptiste gets picked because of it. Junkrat's gonna get largely surrounded, and then you're gonna get circled. Okay, so now let's think about it in terms of what could we have done in order to make this a successful defense, right? So this is a little bit of a messy, chaotic fight, right? They do a half dive, half rotation type of push that kind of makes it so that you respond to one or the other, right? They're throwing out two ults out the bat, already putting a ton of pressure on your supports to make sure that everybody kind of gets kept up alive, and your off tank to make sure that everybody kept up alive. We almost have grab, but that's none of our concern because that's a random. We could potentially be tracking what they have, but we're not going to think that you are because we don't know where your head is at this point. The enemy tanks are going, or the enemy Reinhardt is going to be rotating, and I think this is largely where you make the mistake is right here, right? So I think your largest mistake right here is the fact that you don't stick with your team. And while it's not entirely an issue that you chase after the enemy Reinhardt, because as long as you're keeping your matchup in check, you're kind of doing your job in a way. You're creating a net zero of value as long as you're keeping your enemy, you're keeping the other Reinhardt in check. Sorry, I lost my words somehow through that. But what winds up happening is you kind of open the lid onto your team, and they get behind you initially for the start of the fight, but you don't actually respond to back up. Instead, you get lost in this chase, and it's fine at first, and then you get to this point, and you don't get any value out of the chase, right? If you get value out of the chase, at least, at the very minimum, then you can justify something about it, right? Because it's a very chaotic fight, and all it depends on is each individual player's skill to kind of out mechanic the enemy team. But what's happened is now you're not getting any value out of the fight because you're not protecting your team, you're not keeping the enemy Reinhardt in check in any way, and you're not able to kill the one target that you were close to being able to kill, right? That Baptiste. Then once you get here, you have a point at which you could potentially stabilize. But for some reason, you don't want to push forward into the enemy team. And I'm not sure if it's because you don't know where everybody is, or if it's because you're low health and you're too scared to push forward, but you definitely need to be at least trying to take this space, because as long as you have a tank and a support up, you can mount a defense, because those two kind of hero combinations can generally tempo together to create just general sustain on the point. And as long as you're buying time for your team, that's a successful defense, right? You don't actually have to be killing the enemies to mount a successful defense. You just need to prevent them from making progress towards their objective, right? So you don't push forward here, and although your Ashe gets picked, because you don't push forward, your Baptiste is unsure of where he should go because he's so far from you that pushing forward means death, but staying where he is means death. So he's going to get frozen a little bit, just absolutely freak out and jump for some reason, and that's a pick there. If you had pushed forward, I would like to think that your Baptiste would have had a better perspective of you. And we can tell better here. And chaotic fights really aren't I don't want to say they're not my forte, but they're a little bit difficult to ascribe kind of like blame and reason to, because there's no reason to a chaotic fight. So like I was saying, the Rein and the what was it? The Rein and the BAP, right? The Rein and the BAP push over to the right, and the Ball and Genji kind of dive into your backline, and that instantly creates two separate portals of kind of like confliction that you have to focus on. And neither of them are necessarily the more important one than the other one, but there are micro plays that you can be doing in order to actually pull this off, right? You want to be able to hit that BAP so that he can't just jump away from you. You also don't want to lose so much health in transition of trying to follow the Rein that you don't feel like you can contest the Baptiste while he shoots at you, right? Because you wind up following the Reinhardt and dropping your shield several times and allow the enemy McCree and BAP to get poke damage in on you, which means that you can't actually contest the BAP once you get close to him because you're too afraid of getting headshot and dying. And it's these micro plays that will kind of play out more in chaotic fights, but at the same time there are some positional things that you could be doing in points of the chaotic fight to make it more organized and structured and easy for you to kind of work with your team, you know, instead of having to depend on your own mechanical skills. So let's see what this Baptiste sees out of view during this, right? So good lamp is able to negate a lot of the incoming initial damage. He even negates the ping, or the pin, sorry. And then he freaks out. He's keeping his eyes on you. Okay. Oof, sorry. So this is the moment, right? And this is why I think that you moving forward would have created more organization for the Baptiste and more space for him to move into. Because the way that your shield is facing suggests to the Baptiste that the enemies are behind him. And while you're not wrong, the enemies are surrounding him, right? And you're not protecting multiple angles. By pushing forward, what you would enable this Baptiste to do is use both the cart and your shield as cover, and that would have protected multiple angles. So even if the Baptiste didn't understand that there were people to the left of him, your shield facing forward would have allowed him to funnel into a space that would have protected both his left and his front. And these are really kind of like small, very, very small things that you can do to kind of utilize the map to your greater advantage. And it might have not never ever worked, because if this BAP is charging this jump, you know, and he does it regardless of where your shield faces, then he gets picked by this high noon no matter what. But at least if you move forward, then you maybe start moving towards Brunick. And Brunick is 70 towards Tyre, and you almost have Shatter. And that combination could be potentially huge, because it can't be stopped by the trance that's going on right now. But these are all maybes and ifs, and you won't really know unless you do it. Like, you can't have known unless you did it in this situation, and we can analyze what would have happened. But I do know that your positioning here doesn't help anybody. And generally, when your positioning doesn't help anybody, it's because it's too aggressive or too defensive. And seeing as you're not in the middle of the enemy team, I can't say you're too aggressive, so I have to think that you're being too defensive. You kind of get chased down. Nothing really you could do about that.
Objective lost. Escort the payload.
Hello.
Hopefully, if you're talking in the chat, it'll pop up. I'm not sure. If you have any questions, just let me know. There's been occasional problems with the chat. I have my phone on me, so you could always message me over Discord or anything like that. But let me know if you have any questions, comments, concerns. If you want to have maybe an argument or discussion about something I'm saying, I could always clarify things if that's what's needed.
Group up with me.
I will have some questions for you when we kind of get together on Wednesday. I'm not sure how much I'll be able to necessarily do stuff with you on Wednesday, because I've spent so much more time with the other tanks that I know the things that I want to show them. And I think I see some things that I want to show you as well, some just techniques and stuff like that. Audio issues, you would be able to hear this if you paid closer attention to your audio. But I don't know, you know, exactly how it's going to go, but I definitely have some questions that I want to ask about, you know, how you see yourself as a player and what you like doing, and, you know, comms and stuff like that, just general stuff. Yeah, so it definitely looks like at some point throughout this game you were distracted by something, because you've made several pauses and kind of gotten disoriented several times where you really shouldn't have. So it kind of just looks like you're getting pulled, your attention's getting pulled away or something. I like this shatter. I was actually going to pause and say that's a good shatter if you can shatter this, because it negates the value of the window. I would have shadowed them a little bit earlier personally, just because then, you know, maybe you can cancel it before they even get window out, which delays their progress, but getting window out is always nice if you can kind of get that sweet spot of just canceling the ultimate, but you are a little bit slow on the draw, which could have allowed them to maybe get a pick on somebody over your shoulder that you can't properly protect. Interesting that you do like hopping down from this high ground. I don't know if it's just you're kind of, you know, hanging out with people in ranked, so you're just doing it because you could do it, or if it's just something you frequently do, or maybe it's something you're doing because you see it and you just want to do it right now. Hey, Bob. Oh, bye, Bob. So this is why I'm really curious to know more about you as a player from your understanding of your play style and stuff like that, because this can be one of two things. Either you're bad and you're hiding behind your team, or you think that your team should retreat so that you can get a clean re-engage on the card at the last second, which a clean re-engage on the card at the last second is probably the closest thing you can get to a best chance at victory, because you get everybody healed up, all the cooldowns as reset as possible, and then push out without giving the enemy team any extra ult charge because they don't need it. 12 seconds on the clock, you're right there. But your team isn't responding to what you're doing, so it definitely is an indictment on what you're doing and your abilities, because you're letting your team die. I understand that you have an idea and a philosophy here, potentially. I can't confirm that or deny that, right? But you are backing away from your team when you have 300 plus health and you have effectively 1600 health. And you just let your Baptiste die to Bob because you didn't want to shield him, or because you just thought it would be better to back up. I'm not really sure. But you inherently throw this game because you just back up behind your team. And even if you think that it's a better idea, your team isn't responding to it, so you have to be able to still protect them while trying to do it. I don't any like group ups or anything like that trying to indicate stuff. I don't know if you're in comms trying to tell them. Maybe you're somebody who uses voice chat. I know there's not a ton of people who wind up using voice chat, so maybe the BAP isn't even there if you are trying to use voice chat. There's so many variables that can come along with that. But just going strictly based off of what I see, you let your team down in terms of defending them at the very last second. And I'm not sure that you're going to... No, there's no way. Yeah, okay. And that's the cleanup, folks. So I think there has to be something going on there in that last final moment. That's kind of my initial thought of it. But I'm not really sure what it is that you're trying to do in that situation. So we will kind of like talk about your play style, and I want to see how you play with the team and stuff like that to really understand kind of like what's going on. Like I said, I see some small mechanical things that can be improved on, maybe an occasional decision-making thing here and there. But I think shaking off the rust is going to take some time, and that your awareness is going to come back with your ability to kind of like shake off the rust and stuff. You'll get a little bit sharper, because there's a few times that I think you reacted a little bit slowly or did things a little bit delayed. And I want to say that you were distracted throughout the entirety of this game by something, just because there were moments where you paused at awkward points, or at points that didn't really make sense. So if you have any questions or anything, like, message me. If you have any suggestions on how you think that I can help you kind of like learn things better, just let me know. Some people really know their kind of like learning style and stuff like that. Some people really don't. But yeah, that's all for that specific map. And I'll see you more with whatever comes next. No, stop it. I wanna stop the stream.